at the latter stages of the SAT, phase 4 already, we're going to find it a bit difficult. But no worries, the more difficult it is, the more you're going to have to rely on POE. Don't rush, don't panic. And also don't take this with too much, don't try to weigh this too much, because you don't have to do this if you don't know how to do this. These questions will be on the final 100 points on the SAT. It won't take you too much. It will take you a lot of time, but it won't add as many points as the easier questions like punctuation or grammar questions. The more simpler, the easier it is, the more points you can get. So if you haven't perfected those skills, I would suggest to go reread my In a Nutshell books and then try to perfect those first. And today we're going to firstly start off with structure and purpose, right? Structure and purpose, to be honest, it will be very similar to what we are going to learn today, central ideas and details. Basically, we read the entire paragraph and then we try to comply with the prompt, which is reading, try to find what is that the prompt is requiring, and find the key and just POE A, B, C, and D. So we all know that already, what POE is. And I'm going to start off with them to not take you too much time explaining. And also, I will briefly remind you of the order in which you will read the answer. Firstly, you read this one. This is the prompt. And secondly, if available, you will read the blurb. And thirdly, you will read the paragraph. And fourthly, you will read the answers, the options, so that you can POE. This is the last thing you're going to read. All right, Thumb, you will do the fourth question for me.
I choose C.
C, hang on a sec. Which choice describe the function of the underlying portion in text? How can you explain this? Why you chose C?
The underline and the sentence and the sentence after it emphasize that the character have a bond with her surroundings, so I choose C.
Okay, let's see. So in this one, this is the question, the sentence in question. So I'm going to read this. Pay extra attention. This is very short, but for a paragraph is this long, we're going to have to pay more attention to the underlying portion. She crossed the woods she knew so well. The trees seemed to extend their branches like welcoming arms. They greeted her as an old friend. Soon she reached the riverside. So firstly, A is unrelated, right? You're going to have to POE. A to me is unrelated. What about B? Can you just POE for me? How is B wrong?
It's wrong because in the paragraph it said that she crossed the woods, so she knew it so well. But in B, it says she lost her sense of directions.
Yes, exactly. So you even know where to look for. What is precisely the word that is contradicting this option? So that makes this extra. If you can do it like that, you find specific phrase in the paragraph. In this one, it's very short, so it's quite easy to spot. But in a more complicated set of question, try to find the specific phrase that contradict the question or the option you think is wrong. For example, Dum did in B. You can see that she says that this one is wrong because of this one. She knew so well and she crossed the woods, meaning that she is not lost. She surpassed the wood and she crossed over it. So lost her sense of direction is very wrong because of this phrase. Very good. How about D?
It like it doesn't really relate. I see there are no kind of friendship here. It just said that the Woods greeted her as an old friend, but
Okay, so this is not mentioned, right? So D is not mentioned. So this is why D is wrong. We are going to find, firstly, we got these are the categories in which the options can be wrong. Firstly, it is not mentioned. Secondly, is directly counteract, contradict, meaning that you can, like B, this is directly contradicting. It is directly contradicting this phrase. Not mentioned because if you choose D, that is you are inferent in the inference. You make the inference error. If you choose D, that means that you read a sentence and you can see that this is greeting her old friend. So she must be appreciative of this friendship, right? Because they are greeting her as a no friend. So she must be appreciative. But in this case, it is not mentioned. So if you choose this one, it will mean that you have inference and it will be wrong. This is very common on the SAT, especially on the hard questions like this. And also flipped relationship. That means it is just cherry picking the words on paragraph, but actually it is just inserting it in a way that makes it wrong. For example, if I say she crossed the river she knew so well, that means that I'm just cherry picking, selectively picking the words to make the sentence as close to the original sentence as possible, but I just change up one word and it will be wrong because of cherry picking. This is flipped relationship, and it can occur vice versa in one way, shape, or in any way, shape, or form. So pay extra attention to that. And next time, when you approach a very difficult SAT question, instead of just trying to read over and over again the prompts, the options, try to read the prompt and try to find out what it is that is asking. So in this one is the function of the underlying portion. So you read carefully this one, right? So, and you read the surrounding sentences. It's not that you can't understand it. It's that you haven't found a way to eliminate the wrong questions, right? So in summary, I've sent you the list of difficulties, the questions that are on level 4, which is the final level. You apply this rule. It is not that it's very difficult that you don't understand anything. Even for the utmost complicated poems from Shakespeare or anyone, it will be very easily be eliminated by POE. So try to find a way to POE instead of trying to find the correct answer. Next time, encounter every difficult question with this question in mind. Why did I choose C and not A, B, and D? What makes A, B, and D wrong? Try to ask that question because in practicing, when you ask that question in test taking, you'll find it very beneficial because it will be automated, right? So in this case, it's C. Why am I explaining this? Because I can very easily say that C is correct because A, B, D are they wrong, and that is precisely how Khan Academy or the official sources of the SAT tell you. If you say that, if you find some resources online. But it's not the trick. The trick is to find out why A, B, and D, they are wrong. And there's only one question that is right. What makes C stand out? What makes C different than A, B, and D? Try to ask that question over and over and over again, and then you'll find out that they share the commonality. They share the three principles, the three things that makes them wrong. All right, next up, 5. I'm going to save it for Lina. Can you do 5 for me? Chose D. Let's see. Present an account of a misunderstanding. What made you chose D?
because it only mentioned in at the beginning of the paragraph, while B is mentioned at the end of the paragraph, and C is wrong because
First half.
it it is then mentioned in the paragraph.
Of its short history. So this is not mentioned. A is from the first sentence and B is from the last sentence.
Yes.
All right, let's see. Years ago, a grave American savant, being in London, observed an evening party here. A certain coxcombial fellow, as he thought, and with absurd ribbon in his lapel, and full of smart banter, whisking about to the admiration of as many as were disposed to admire. So you can very clearly see that this is very, very difficult to understand. But you only need to read the keywords, because they will tell you when the paragraph is difficult by looking at this one. Firstly, if you ever encountered a man called Herman Melville, he is very smart, so he will most likely going to give out very complicated sentences. But also, if they say that the poems, they are from the 1800s, it will mean that this is a historic or literature kind of poem, kind of paragraph, and it will be quite complicated to understand. But there's one key to every single paragraph in this day and age. It is that they repeat themselves very often. Look, and also they use a lot of commas, if you notice. You only need to use the principle of stripping sentences that I taught you. Eliminate the things that don't matter, just get rid of them, and then you'll find the sentence much more easier to understand. Years ago, a grave American savant, I'm going to cross this out because it makes me tremble when reading this sentence. American savant observed at an evening party here, a certain coxcombial fellow, as he thought. I'm going to get rid of this because trying to find the phrases or the modifiers that mention the kind of the emotion, trying to get rid of them, because mostly likely the emotion is going to emphasize the sentence. It doesn't serve any specific purposes. As he thought is kind of emphasizing the emotion. An absurd ribbon in his lapel and full smart banter, whisking around about to the admiration of as many as were disposed to admire. And observed at an evening party there, this very absurd person, an absurd ribbon in his lapel, so he's very decorated, and full of smart banter. Banter is just like a chat. Banter is like chatting and talking. Smart banter, whisking about the admiration of as many as were disposed to admire. This is just talking about how he find a person that is very absurd or very weird. Absurd means weird. It seems very weird. All right. Next one. Great was the savant this day, but chancing ere long to find himself in a corner with the jackanapes, got into conversation with him. There was somewhat when he was somewhat ill prepared for the good sense of the jackanapes, but was altogether thrown aback, upon subsequently being informed that he was no less a personage than Sir Humphrey Davy. All right. I only understand the two words that I have just underlined because, well, this is very difficult, right? No fear, because this one, ill prepared, meaning that he is unprepared. So he's very surprised. This one, for the good sense, but thrown aback. So he's also very surprised. This is the Sir Humphrey Davy. And look, who is Sir Humphrey Davy? This is why you should read the blurb before the paragraph. You read the prompt, enter the blurb, enter the paragraph because of this. Who is Sir Humphrey Davy? Humphrey Davy is a prominent British chemist and inventor, so he's very popular. So this guy, contrary to his appearance, he is very funky. He looks very funny. but he is in fact very brilliant and very famous. So he's just taken aback. He's very surprised. The main character is surprised. A, the purpose of the text is not to explain why one character dislikes another, because this is talking about why the character is surprised. A is wrong. Next is B, it portrays the thought of a character who's embarrassed about his own behavior. This one doesn't mention anything about the main character's behavior, just mention about the observation, what he sees, not what he feels or what he does, about only what he sees. So B is wrong because it is not mentioned. C offers a short history of how a person came to be famous. This is, as Lina said, not mentioned. Is not mentioned any story. It's only talking about an event, a sequence of events, and then he saw a very funny looking man, and then he judged him by the looks of it, and then he was surprised because that one was very famous and very prominent. So B is also wrong. How about D? In this case, you can see A, B, C, they are wrong, so D is most likely going to be correct, or we would be wrong from the beginning. But D, let's see, it presents an account of a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding isn't always has to be negative or has to be like misunderstanding doesn't mean that they are yelling at each other, they are arguing. Misunderstanding meaning that they just made a mistake in understanding. That's why misunderstanding what it means. So in this case, only D means that this person doesn't understand anything about the main character, doesn't understand anything about the Sir Humphrey Davy. But on a closer look, he realized that this man is very famous. So this is a clear misunderstanding, a contradicting thought, right? So this one is D. Very difficult, right? But in summary, you just need to understand some words, one on another. You just skip every other words, because remember, do not ever reread a sentence, because it will cost you a lot of time. And before you know it, 5 minutes have already gone by and you've barely done the 5th question. So try your best not to look back, because you can most likely see the information being repeated. As I said, the passages or the paragraphs from the 1800s or the early 1900s, it will be very repetitive. And if you haven't understood the first sentence yet, you will most likely find a kind of similar information later in the sentence. So don't be afraid if you haven't understood the first or the second sentences or the first or second phrases. Try to continue, try your best to continue without ever looking back, and then you'll find eventually the ones that you understand. For example, I understand this word, banter. I don't understand what concoction of fellow is, but I understood absurd, understood smart banter, and whisking about, meaning just chatting, joking, and then ill prepared, throwing back, Sir Humphrey Davy. I can string together a sequence of events, and then I can make up my mind what is happening. So that's how you're going to approach a very, very difficult paragraph. Very good. This one is quite difficult, to be honest. 6th question. This Ving.
I choose D.
D. Which choice best? The function describes a mean by which. Why did you choose D?
Because I eliminate the 3 questions. I eliminate A because it the underline doesn't mention about that.
Let's start from top to bottom. A, B, and C. What is A wrong?
Because the underline in the paragraphs doesn't mention why the parasite is susceptible to horizontal genes.
Okay, let's see why it is not susceptible to horizontal gene transfer than hosts are. Why feeding a parasite could acquire gene from one host, relocate from different vertebrate species and transfer. Yeah, it doesn't even mention about the horizontal gene. It most likely go transfer between. It mentions here. So this is what I would categorize as a flipped relationship, because it cherry picks the the words, but it phrases in a way that makes it wrong because it is not directly related. So A is wrong because it doesn't mention, right? Great. How about B?
Be, because the text never discussed why some changes are more likely to be transferred. Yes.
It's also unmentioned. Very good. How about C?
This is also about a mention.
Not mention how horizontal gene transfer occur among vertebrates with how it occurs among invertebrates. Yeah, so this one is quite focused on this very last sentence only. So we can just look at the sentence in being underlined, and we can see that they ask for the function. They don't ask for the function in context as a whole, but they ask to summarize, summarize this sentence, right? So ABC, Ving said that they are not mentioned or they are just mixing up. So that is correct because essentially this is asking us to summarize the last sentence. And D is the only thing. Let's say it means by which horizontal gene transfer might occur among vertebrates. Feeding. Yes, this is talking about how. A means by which is basically how. This one is talking about why. These two are why, so this is wrong. And this contrast, also wrong. This is talking about the way it transfers, how this gene transfers. All right, very good. Next one, 7. Who?
B.
7B. The text describes general situation, then illustrates the situation. For this kind of question, the structure of the text, I'm going to ask you where it describes a situation, a general situation. Where is this information?
The second sentence. It describes the oh wait, the first and the second sentence both.
All right. Many films from the early 1900s have been lost. These losses include several films in the first wave of Black women filmmakers. We know about these lost movie only. Yeah, in these first sentences, it is a general situation. It is not a complex problem. It is not notable individuals, and also it is not a debate. So from the first half of the paragraph, we can almost choose B. But let's see, where is illustrate that situation with examples?
In the latter part, it describes a few names and their works.
You can see this one is specific examples. You can just choose 2 words to be sure. There's just 2 words to make this option right in the latter part.
For example.
Exactly. This one is talking about how, for example, and this option talking about illustrate with specific examples. And this one doesn't, the other 3, they don't talk about how it is giving examples, only B. So you can just rely on these very simple words, and then you can find that B is correct. All right. So this one is require a bit of wit. And if you are quick-minded, you're going to solve this question very easily. All right. Next up, 8, bike. What did you choose?
C.
You chose C. Let's see. It describes a direction that occurs.
Oh no, D.
All right, D. It helps explain Cruz's position with respect to community of civil rights thinkers. All right, why did you choose D?
Because like even though he said like Cruz like identified himself as a like nationalist. Uh, he's still like
So this one is talking about Cruz's position, and he is criticizing Black nationalists. So this is his position, right? And next is respect to community of civil rights thinkers. Yeah. All right. Basically, when a question is correct, it almost sum up the entire question, the sentence or sentences in question. So you can see this one is summarizing or paraphrasing this underlined sentence in just very short another one. It helps explain Cruz's position, and his position is sharply criticized Black nationalist. This is the key word, and C describes a direction that this one ought to take. Describe a controversy that dictates Cruz's reputation. So I'm going to cross out A first because it is the most apparent. Secondly, I'm going to cross out the controversy. Oh no, controversy it might be, but C is wrong because it doesn't talk about suggesting any direction the civil rights CRM they ought to take. It doesn't talk about any of that. How about B? Sharply criticize Black nationalists, even though this word is very, very tricky. Cruz himself identified as a Black nationalist. So these two might be contradicting to each other, and they might create controversy. But in this case, it is not mentioned. These, as far as we know, are not controversial because in this sentence, it doesn't mention that. So D is the only thing that talks enough, that says enough about what this sentence serves, what the purpose of this sentence is. All right, so it's D. Very good. Next up, let's back up to Thumb, number 9.
I choose B.
B, it describes a problem that arises in research on particular topics, then sketches a historian's approach, right? B, I'm going to, because we've already grasped the gist of this kind of question already, so I'm going to move faster a bit. Michelle, historian, has dilemma, exactly. Dilemma is kind of yes or no. You don't know whether to answer yes or no. This is called a dilemma because, for example, this will appear a lot on the SAT. So I want you to remember this question, this word. For example, your girlfriend asks you out for dinner, or boyfriend, and your best friend also asks you out for dinner. So you are in a little bit of a dilemma between choosing in between the two because, well, you can't choose. This is what dilemma means. All right. This one will appear a lot on scientific context. It means that you have yet to decide whether this one is true or not. That is a dilemma inherent to research. So dilemma is basically a problem, but you have to choose between the two or more options. To research on the status of women in the tribe during this one, tribal narratives underestimate. Then sketches historian approach, their approach. Let's see if it says anything about approach. Underestimate the degree. If this person Judy argues that shock in the tribe homeland were written records by providing crucial insights into those roles. A historian's approach. Let's see who is the historian. This one has identified the dilemma. The primary to research travel narratives on other account. Underestimate the degree of power conferred on Choctaw women by their traditional roles in political, civic, and ceremonial life. She argues that Choctaw oral tradition and findings from archaeological sites in the tribe's homeland supplement the written record by providing crucial insights into those roles. The approach, so this is not really clear yet, so I'm going to result in a POE. A problem, shortcoming is not a shortcoming. It's a dilemma, not a shortcoming. C, listed advantaging, very wrong. Particular, challenging to research, then suggest a related topic. So this one is wrong because the latter part is wrong. So B is essentially correct because I can't find anything that's better than B, right? Next up, 10, Lina.
10B.
10B, it presents a study that addresses an unresolved question about the presence of forests along streams in agricultural environments. A study that addresses an unresolved question presents a study. It's been unclear that to investigate the issue. It's been unclear. Unresolved question. Yes, correct. Let's see, to investigate the issue. Yes, so this is a study. The study about an unresolved question. Very good. Next up, Ving, 11.
11D.
11D, it provides overstructure, it provides characterization about field of thoughts by noting two works in it, and then details in a way in which some works are more comprehensive than others. Let's see. Firstly is characterization about field, such as are partly concerned with how to live, right? This is talking about what this field is. Two works, noting two works, very specific. This one and this one, right? Sounding good. But philosopher Jonathan Barnes argued that works that present a method of living such life without supply motive, only to those already wishing to be morally good. Those with no desire of moral goodness will not choose to follow their rules. However, some works of moral also proposing a reason for living one. So this one is providing additional information other than what has already been provided earlier. So this one is more comprehensive than others. Yeah, more comprehensive. That means it provides more information. So D is correct. All right, good. 12, who?
C.
12, what?
C.
C. It reinforces the text skepticism about the possibility of, firstly, is the skepticism, positivity of truly achieving self-knowledge. Who can calculate the orbit of his own soul? Very profound. Non-fiction, when one had weighed the sun in the balance and measured the steps of the moon and mapped out the seven heavens stars by star, there still remains oneself. Who can calculate the orbit of his own soul? Is very profound indeed. Skepticism, yes. Possibility of truly achieving self-knowledge, his own soul, right? Great, good. I think C is correct. Let's check. Right, C. All right, next up is 13, back.
13 is C.
C. It provides context that clarifies the significance of the information follows in the rest of the sentence. Before the discovery, caves lost this wide range of environments that indicated by earlier evidence. The Denisovans were thought to have lived only at high altitude, but relatively low climate in what now Russia and China. Significance, but the discovery may have lived at low altitude. So I'm going to result in POE. Let's see. It defines a term use, so it's very wrong. Emphasizes the main goal, so wrong. Dismisses untrue. Untrue research. Right, this one is untrue, yes, but presented in the previous sentence, wrong. D is wrong, because this one is presented in the sentence. This is a new one, so be careful. Right, good. So that's it for this section. All right, try to redo this one, and also open the books that I have published on Classroom about Erica Meltzer or just Vibrant Publisher. You can find out that the different categories of question, they have their own set of questions on them. You can try them out and practice them a bit more. If you run out of resources, tell me, then I can find another one. All right, next one, we will talk about quantitative, right? Quantitative. So this one is quite difficult when it comes to digital SAT. On the paper SAT, it's very simple. You just need to look it's almost word by word. It's almost verbatim, but in digital SAT, it's a bit more advanced. You have to interpret the data and then find what best fit the circumstances, which means, in this case, complete the assertion. You're going to have to read what the assertion is. The main contributors to the world's urbanization since 1970 have been countries like Algeria, whose population went to where. So you find that we are going to have to look for since 1970 and in Algeria. The main contributor of the world, so from Algeria is the triangle, and from 1970 is from here, went from this to this. This is 1970, this is 2020. When you find the question about quantitative, you have to read vertically. That means you're trying to find the differences between the four answers. Here you have less around 20, 40, 50, 1970, and this one. So essentially, you're looking about these two time frames, here and here. Let's see, it is rising up. Firstly, it is rising up. So it went from, this is less than 20%. So this is B, C, and D, they're wrong. And to more than 50% in 2020. This is way of a stretch. Let's see. Oh no, I'm sorry, I just mistook it for Nigeria. Less than 40%. So A and D are wrong. And I think it is more than 70%. So it's C, right? What do you find when you read a graph? Firstly, you will find the vertical lines, which is the vertical title, percentage of living in city, and secondly, you read the legends. You read the horizontal lines, the year, and the title. You read the titles first, and then you read the legends. These are the legends, and then you read the graph. All right. Only then, after that, you read the last. You're trying to fill in the question. Okay. 1C. That's very simple. Because this question is quite simple, but it will get progressively more difficult. All right, and next up is 2. Let's start with them.
I choose A.
2A. Which choice most effectively used? Justify. Oh, wait, what's the claim? Can you find me the claim? If I haven't have this underlined, I'm going to fix this later. But where's the claim? Do you know?
The last sentence under the number of investigative articles published to 2010.
Okay, although the number of investigative articles published in this newspaper has varied significantly over the period shown, the number of rows has fallen since 2010. So you can very clearly see the general line is falling. 2010, approximately 1,000. What did you choose, Tom?
A.
A, right? So it fell to 52019. So this is still very simple. Smallest annual number published approximate. This is not comparing the two timelines. The two milestones. Yeah, the 2 milestones. See the greatest annual number of investigative article published in the newspaper shown. Yeah, not comparing. This is rising up, not down. So A, right? 3, Lina.
choose D.
D. For each of three ratings, correlations with velocities are further from zero. What is the conclusion?
Conclusion is that the correlation with velocity are stronger than those with density.
All right. How can you find the correlation?
They mention that correlation range from -1 to 1, with greater distance from 0 indicating greater strain.
So they are explaining this table, right? You just pick these two and trying to find the correlation with velocities are stronger than those with density. Correlation with the correlation with velocity. You can see that this one is further from 0, 0.8587, and this one is only 0.7447. So this one is further from 0 comparing to this one. Let's see. Yeah, this is just basically rephrasing this conclusion. So this most likely going to be correct. All right, D. Next up, 4, Ving. This one is quite long. Right.
B.
4B, to complete the statement. Seawater outside lava affected area, there was little change in the average concentration of nitrate, 75 to 125 meters below the surface, to 4 to 45 meters below the surface.
I choose B. I choose B, not D.
Oh, this is number 4. Oh, you chose B, right?
Yeah.
For both depths, ranges measured, the average concentration of nitrate was substantially higher in seawater with the lava affected area than in the seawater outside the lava affected area. Now let's see. The statement is this one. Believe that the lava plunged nearly 300 meters below the surface. It dislodged pockets of this nutrients releasing it float upward, given that. So this is trying to purport this information, giving more nutrients. Both range measured, the average concentration of nitrate were substantially higher in the seawater in the lava affected. So this one is saying that the lava that makes makes the nutrient surges up to the top. So the number is going to be higher lava affected than in the seawater outside of the lava affected. So this one is comparing the lava affected and the non-lava affected. Seawater in lava affected, and this is outside. So for both depths were substantially higher. So we can see this one is higher and this one is also higher, nitrate. This one is higher and this one is also higher. So in summary, you can see that the nutrients or the particles, in summary, nitrate and phosphate, they both increases in the area that is affected by the lava. So it most likely going to purport the assumption that lava causes the nutrient to go up. So it's B, right? Very good. Remember, when we look for such a long question like this, trying to look for what you're going to distinguish between two. Because in this one, they are trying to prove that the lava makes the nutrient goes up. That means you're going to have to compare the areas in which the lava is affecting and the area outside of which the lava is affecting. So in this case, we cannot measure different depths in the same area. We have to measure the same depth in two different areas. In this case, B is the only one that's doing that. And A and D, they're comparing different in different levels. And C, it is in the lava, both depths, higher than average concentration of phosphate. This is comparing different kind of substances. So it's not related to each other. So B is the only one that is reliably concluding that lava is directly causing nutrients to rise up from the bottom. So it's B. Very good. This one is quite confusing at first if you don't know what to do, but try to look for the comparison because you're trying to compare the areas affected by lava and the areas that's not affected by lava. So 4B. All right. Next up, Hung, 5.
Five is wait. So
Right, 5C. Participants 20 reported feeling significantly colder than the other 2 participants did. Complete the statement. The table shows the 3 participants, according to wanted the room to be cooler. Let me just reread the entire context. Non-governor colleagues, this participant filled out neutral, how they would prefer the temperature to be adjusted. Table showed 3 participants responded. According to the table, all 3 wanted the room to be cooler. Why did you choose C?
theory.
Yes, the only thing that's making this short, because to me, C doesn't even make too much sense because it doesn't conclude anything that's apparent. But A, B, and D, they use the informations that are wrong. So C is the only one that's correctly inferring the information. So C is the only answer. It's not that C is the best answer. Of course, if I can choose, I would choose E. I write my own answer. But A, B, and D, they aren't correct because they use the wrong information. So it's C, 5C. Next up, 6, back.
6. B.
6B, none of the percentage. What is the assertion? What is the assertion?
What do you mean?
I'm asking for the assertion from this prompt. Support Ego's and colleagues' assertion. What is the assertion? It's the easiest part, to be honest. If you can choose B, it's most likely that you're going to be able to choose what the assertions are. So next time, try to look for the verb. For example, what is the conclusion? You look for the word verb conclude, right? What is the argument? You look for the verb argue. What is the argument? You can also look
Oh,
for the word positive.
I wasn't certain like what you were asking.
So I'm asking for assertion. That means you look for the word assert, and then you find the phrase that they are referring to. You are providing the evidence to support the assertion. So you're going to have to know what the assertion are, right? So next time, if I ask you what the conclusion is, what the assertions are, you're going to have to follow the verbs firstly. And if you can't find the verb, you're going to have to rely on its synonyms. This, in this case, is the assert. Very simple. That countries in each region reported effects on provisioning services that provisioning service and on provisioning services, and that provisioning services represent a majority of the reported services. All right, this one is quite complicated. None of the percentages shown for provisioning services are lower than 33. The overall percentages shown for provisioning services is 75%. None of the are lower provisioning services. Countries in each region effects on majority. So you're going to have to find the options that complement the result, complements the percentage. This one is positive, but they represent this one, it doesn't talk about positive at all. C, provisioning services run one no cultural evidence. This is unrelated. D is great percentage, 88%. So if they're asking for the majority, the best way you can do is that most of these percentages, they are big, right? They are big, and none of them is smaller than set values. That is the best way you can describe how a sector takes the majority. So B is the only one that's correct. When you find it, you understand it, because it is quite difficult to explain by words, but it will be very much apparent once you do it. So I would believe that you choose B correctly because you just understood it without even needing to have it explained. But remember what to look for, which column to look for. This one, we are comparing the vertical volumes column with the horizontal column. You can see that in every single region, they almost always take the majority. So you find the way to complement the majority. So it's B, right? It's quite obscuring, but A, C, and D, they're wrong. So B is correct. Next up, 7. Let's go back to them.
I choose B.
Right, B. What is the conclusion?
The mere presence of anger in a review to worsen readers' perceptions of the
perception of the review. Though the mere presence of anger in a review may not negatively affect readers' perception, but a high degree of anger does worsen readers' perception of the review. All right, the review could be helpful or unhelpful. This is the attitude of the review subject, and this is the helpfulness of the review. Compared to participants who saw the control view, which is this control. All right, I'm going to explain this. For example, if you try to test this with high anger, right? In statistics and in survey, if you want to test whether high anger affects a certain aspect, affects something, you firstly going to need 3 groups. Firstly is the high anger group. Secondly is the contradicting group, which is the low anger group. And thirdly is the control group. Controlled group, which is not angry, not low anger, not high anger. It is medium. It is unaffected. So you're going to need 3 groups at least to sort of make a helpful assumption from the result. Firstly is the group that carries the perspective property that they are looking for, which is high anger, and the group that is contrasting. Also, the group that is not affected in a natural environment, it doesn't affect it. It's not affected. So there are 3 groups. The control review is no anger, this one. Okay. Control review, participants who saw the lower anger review rated slightly more helpful. Low anger is quite helpful. High anger is less helpful. So this one is clearly stating rephrasing the conclusion. So B is correct. 8, Lina.
8A.
A larger area than either measurement, for example, the corner ratio corner. Yeah, it is larger. Yep, this is very simple. Not 8 is A, 9 Vinh,
B.
9B. Which choice? What is the hypothesis?
Like 3, like 4 button up.
1, 2, 3, 4 from here.
Oh, like 2.
Okay, so here, right?
Yeah.
From hypothesize that municipalities to if they can't, right?
Yes.
So this one is the hypothesis because the verb hypothesized, all right, are much more likely to respond to firms and offer incentives if expansions can be announced in time to benefit local elected officials than if they can't. Which weaken, you have to take this very seriously because the word weaken can make or break our answers. So you chose B, right? The proportion of municipality that responded to inquiry offered incentives didn't substantially differ across the announcement timing condition. This is B. The proportion of municipalities that responded to inquiry offered incentives didn't. No response. Announcement before and announcement after. Let me just read the entire context. In the United States, Bermuda's expanded knows a team of political scientists hypothesized that municipalities are much more likely to respond to firm and offer incentive can be announced in time to benefit local elected officials than if they can't. I can see that they don't differ too much here. Can be announced in time to benefit, are much more likely. This word is directly contradicting the graph. This is going to have to be represented by a much more drastic change. In this case, this is not much more likely. So this is very much wrong from the beginning. So which one inspires this question? This evidence. The proportion of municipalities that responded or offered didn't substantially differ across the announcement of timing condition. Okay, timing condition before and after, they don't differ too much. Large majority inside. This is wrong because this is comparing the horizontal lines, but not comparing to the two adjacent columns. So this is very much incorrect. A and C and D, they are not pointing to the comparison that we are looking for, which is between the two adjacent columns, these here. But rather they compare the 3 columns next to each other, 3 pairs of columns, and this is very wrong. So B is the only one that's correct. Okay, next up, 10. Hung.
Sorry, I was muted. 10B.
10B. B, right?
Yes.
CNO-treated females showed a substantial increase and then decline in activity over the monitoring period, where CNO-treated males showed a substantial decline in activity followed by steep increase. Complete the assertion. Found that the mice in the study showed sex-specific differences in response to neuroactivation. Neuroactivation. This one is going to be progressively more difficult to investigate the influence of certain estrogen responsive neurons on the energy expenditure. More biologists monitoring the activity levels of the mice by measuring how frequently the animals broke infrared beams crossing the enclosure. Cornea et al. Found that the mice, et al. It means that Korea This is scientific notation. Et and more. This is et al. And more. This is basically citing that there are more authors to this research. Found that the mice in a study showed sex-specific differences in response to neuron activation. So we're going to eliminate one by one. The 4 groups of mice differed greatly in the activities levels before treatment, but so identical. This is wrong, identical. We're looking for differences. Saline females, treated females, show substantially more activity than saline treated, saline here, females, square and diamond, substantially more activity, certain point, than square and diamond. They are pretty much the same substantially. If this is true, this would be the comparison, but you can see that the diamonds and square, they're very much likely to be colliding to each other. So this is also wrong, substantial. It is not substantial. And D, CNO treated females showed more activity related to saline treated females than CNO males showed relative to or CNO treated females showed substantially differences respond to neurons activation. CNO treated females showed more activity relative to saline treated females. Now these two, B and D, they are most likely to be correct, B and D, both of them, but one is wrong. CNO treated females showed a substantial increase and then decline. Increase and decline. CNO treated males show decline with a steep increase. Oh, CNO. This is not a steep at all. This one is wrong because CNO treated males, it is not substantial decline and also not a steep increase. So this one is saying that the males should look like this. The males graph, which is the circle one, this one, has to look like this. Substantial decline has to look like this. And then a steep increase has to look like this. Do you understand the phrasing and the words they're using here? Steep means that it has a high slope that's going up very fast. And then substantial decline, it has to be pointy like this. This one is very even. So the very first part of this claim is true and the latter part is wrong. So this one is B can't be true because the latter one is wrong. And D is the only one left. So D is correct, not B, okay? Next up, 11, bike.
11.
11 is
11 is A.
okay. Strong enough to generate about 150,000 more megawatt hour of electricity from wind turbines. For example, the graph shows that for the west region, wait, am I still sharing the? For the west region, the winds were west region. The winds were about 150,000 more. The wind turbines, stronger than the forecast. Oh, this is comparing the stronger. So 150 here, 175, 50, 50. So cross out B and D. C, 150, less wrong because this is looking for stronger than forecast, not weaker than forecast. So it's A, very good. All right, this one is, I remember, if I recall correctly, this was quite complicated to understand. But let's see, Thumb, what did you choose this question?
I choose B.
Why did you choose B?
Mm. I think it is the best with the conclusion and the data in the table.
Can you just elaborate? Why is it fitting? I want to hear from you. This one is quite convoluted, complicated, but let's see. Why B?
Mm, in the conclusion, it says that the increased competition drove production at the expense of growth. So it means that in the more competitive environment, the production of that something will higher than in a less competitive one. And in the sentence, in the answer B, I saw that it said tadpoles in the low medium had greater average body masses.
Okay.
And
continue.
And large greater body mass than one in the high population. So I think that closer to the conclusion.
All right, let's see the conclusion. You said that the increased competition drove both the B production at the expenses of growth. So we're looking for the numbers that indicates that this production is higher because competition is higher. Competition is higher means that density is higher, right? This is basic biology. And which one is indicating the growth? Is bufadienolide or is it the mass? It is the mass, right? This is the number that indicates the growth. So if this is true, which is supporting, we have to find the one that is true. Means that we're looking for the numbers that indicates the B factor, the B toxin. It will be increased, right? Increased drove production. This one will increase and this one will decrease. So as a result, in higher, this one will decrease and this one will increase. Increase and increase. Oh, this one is concentration. So basically, we can see that the mass is lowering on the higher density because remember, if a group or a herd of animal and if there are more of them, it will most likely going to be in higher density, in higher competition, because if there are a lot of individuals in a herd or in a group of animals is a herd, it means that they have to compete for food, for mate, for the place to stay, or the for them. It is called the competition. So the higher the population density is, the higher chance of them competing each other. Yeah, the territory even. So the higher is the higher competition. Medium and low, they have the lower competition. B, let's say, in the lower medium population has substantially lower average. This one is a great indication because lower medium has to have a lower bufadienolide, the B concentration, but had a greater average body mass, right? Greater body mass means that these two, they prioritize the growth other than the production of the toxin, bufadienolide. So this one is true, but let's see the average bufadienolide. What is the average here? The average here. They both are slightly smaller than this one. So medium and low, they have a larger mass, which means they have a bigger growth, and they have less toxin, which means they have less the average toxin per tadpole. So this is B, correct? This is not directly phrasing the entire the numbers from the paragraph, but we have to understand what they are asking for. They're asking for us to compare between the bufadienolide production and also the growth factor. What is the growth? It is the mass. You are bigger, you have more growth to you if you're heavier, right? In human, in animals at least, not in human. In human, we can consider the height and everything, but in animals, the clearest indication of growth is mass. In this case, we have to look for mass. So this one, because why do we know that is mass? Because we have to rely on the conclusion, and because we don't have any numbers that says growth percentage, we have to rely on the numbers that are available, which is mass, in contrast to the number of bufadienolide and everything like that, or the average number of that. So we have to rely on mass. So remember, in a quantitative questions, we don't always have everything available to us. Sometimes we're going to have to inference. And this is what makes this question so complicated. We have to make sometimes inferences, and sometimes we have to make sense of what the table is giving us. It's not always word by word, it's not always verbatim, but we have to understand what it is providing and what it is not. In this case, it is not providing the percentage of growth, but it is providing the mass. So we have to make use of that. Okay, great. Next one, 13, Lina.
I can see.
What was that? 13.
I do see.
Okay, C. New York Times had 20% revenue change. Conclude. What is the conclusion?
The conclusion is that introducing a paper is generally more beneficial for larger newspapers.
Okay.
Have I?
All right. So this is a larger newspaper, is the New York Times. And why is it larger? Because it says this, larger size. The Denver Post is smaller. So this is comparing the percentage change. They're saying that it benefits the larger newspaper. So this is positive, and this is negative and slightly negative. And this is a lot of positivity to the larger newspapers. So it makes sense in this context. So it's very simple. All right. That concludes this portion of the lesson. We still have some minutes left. I'm going to walk through and introduce you guys a bit about the central ideas and details so that you guys can do this at home as homework. So central ideas and details. It's basically not too difficult because comparing that, we say we have already done structure and purpose. We can see that over structure of the text and central detail, idea and details, it also says what is the main idea of the text. I would say this is a subset of the structure and purpose. It is a smaller set of questions than structure and purpose. So it is within the textual and still smaller than structure and purpose. So this is a very small subset of the structure and purposes, and also the subset of the textual. So this is the biggest, smallest, and to central idea and details. In the textual, which is the very last kind of separate, last category of the ICT, this is the most difficult, and we have to use POE most of the time. And also, we have to read, because it's called textual, we have to consider the context, which is firstly quantitative. We have just learned it. Structure and purposes, central ideas and details, which we are going to look here. We're going to have a glance at here. It's not too different to the other things because it's all within the textual category. So let's see. What is the main idea of the text? When we have to look for the main idea, do we have a sentence to look for the main idea of the text? Who can tell me? If we look for the main idea, what is the positive? What should we look for first in a paragraph? What part of a paragraph should we look for? Do we know? If we look for the main idea of the text, what should we look for in a paragraph? What part of a paragraph should we look for it? Does it have anything that says this paragraph had the main idea is Does it say that? No, it doesn't. So what should we look for?
The hypothesis.
Was it
Hypothesis.
hypothesis? In a case like this, in a case like this, we don't really have the hypothesis, do we? Hypothesis is only partly true for the scientific paragraphs. And in this case is the history and also literature passages or paragraphs. They don't really have the hypothesis. And I think you are mistaking hypothesis for the goal of the research in scientific paragraphs. So in general, where should we look for? If we look for the topic of the paragraph, where should we look for?
Topic sentence.
Was it?
The topic sentence.
Exactly, very good. We look for the topic sentence. This is the structure of an English paragraph. We have the topic sentence. We have the content. And we have the conclusion. Right? So we look for the topic sentence, and also sometimes we're going to have to look for the conclusion, because topic sentence, they're most likely they're going to have every paragraphs, they have a topic sentence, but sometimes they don't. They only have a transition as a topic because it's transitioning from the previous paragraph. In this case, we only will see one, so there's no topic sentence. So we're going to have to rely on the conclusion. So how are we going to infer the topic sentence? We're still going to have to read the entire paragraph, but we look more closely to the topic and the conclusion, topic sentence and conclusion, which is the very first sentence and the very last sentence. And if it is incomplete, you're going to have to expand it or into the very first two sentences and the very last two sentences. Let's look at this. Many intellectual histories of the Black Power movement of the 1960s and 1970s rely heavily on essays and other explicitly ideological works as primary sources, a tendency that can overrepresent the perspective of a small number of thinkers, most of whom were male. Historian Ashley D. Farmer has shown that expanding the array of primary sources to encompass more types of print material, including political cartoons, advertisements, and artwork, leads to a much better understanding of the movement and the crucial and diverse roles of Black women played in shaping it. So, firstly, we can look for the topic sentence. We can see that this is saying that it can overrepresent the perspective of a small number of thinkers. From this sentence alone, can we just do POE? Let's see. Before Farmer's research had largely ignored the intellectual dimensions of Black Power movement. This is quite correct. Let's check it. Many intellectual histories rely on essays and as primary overrepresent because they were male, most likely male to write essays. It can be overrepresent the males. So this is not that they are choosing to ignore. They're not ignoring. It is that the essays, there aren't a lot of women who are writing essays at that time yet. So it can be wrong to interpret it like that. So A is wrong because the topic sentence isn't talking about that. How about B? Farmer's method and research have enriched the historical understanding of the Black Power movement and Black women's contribution to it. So the topic sentence doesn't explicitly say anything about Black women's contribution to it, but it does say about the overrepresentation of men, right? So this is quite similar to what B is saying. It's talking about the way that we are looking for information in books, in essays, they're all from males. So it can overrepresent the male population, and it can ignore the Black woman's contribution. So let's see C and D if they are still they are wrong, or if they can have less of an information like this, B will most likely be correct. Let's see C. Other historians of the Black Power movement have criticized farmers' use of unconventional primary sources. So the main scope of the paragraph, does it talk about other historians? No, it doesn't. It doesn't talk about other historians. It's talking about the overrepresentation, the general knowledge. It's only talking about the way that the unfairness in the old society is weighing on toward the overrepresentation of a specific group of thinkers. It doesn't talk about the other historians and their criticism. It doesn't talk about that. It's talking about the actual reality. It's talking about the status quo, the state of which they were living in. It's not talking about other historians. How about D? The figures in the Black Power movement, whom historians tend to cite, would have agreed with Farmer's conclusion about women's role in the movement. The figures in Black Power movement, whom historians tend to cite. So this, I don't think, is the main idea of the text. It's saying, firstly, there are two scopes here. Firstly is the topic. They most likely to overrepresent the male population. And secondly is how it is unfair to women. And historian D has shown expanding and crucial and diverse role that women play. So in summary, D is misaligned with the topic sentence and also to the paragraph as a whole. So if you want to rely on the topic sentence alone to save your time, if you run out of time, you can just do that. But for safe measure, and if you still have time, you can still read the entire paragraph and then cross out D and choose B. All right. This is how you're going to do the central ideas and details, the main idea of the text specifically. And let's see. In this case, asking about seafaring men, we're going to have to focus on the entire paragraph as a whole. But if they ask about the topic or the main idea, this is what I would call a big picture. Then we can rely on the topic sentence if and only if we run out of time. We can just read the very first sentence and we just POE, jump right straight into POE. That's also doable, viable. But if you still have time, read the entire paragraph. It doesn't cost you too much time, and also it ensures the general flow of the paragraph. So the latter part is about, yeah, it's most likely that you can see it has the two types of question. Firstly is central ideas, which is the main idea of the text, and secondly is the details about Hunt, a specific detail, focusing on a specific part. What are they talking about? The ETL fabrication. This is basically like structure and purpose, so I don't really have to re-mention how to do it. You guys have done it already, but in the purpose and structure part of the SAT. And so then I can give this as a homework to you guys, because this is the only thing new here, is the main idea of the text. And that's it. We have finished the three. Let's see if we still have any more. This is, hang on a sec. New share, desktop, SAT tutoring, class notes, students, class notes. All right, so cross-tech, oh, we still have cross-tech connection. We've already done inferences, information and ideas, central ideas and details. Oh, we haven't done inferences yet, so there's still that. Textual, we finished. Cross-text connection, so there's still cross-text connection and inferences. These are very difficult, quite difficult. It's not too difficult because it's the SAT. Let's check. Boundaries, done, check. Form structure, check. Standard English convention, check. Rhetorical synthesis, very simple. Transition, word in context. Yeah, check. Quantitative, just learned it. Central idea, just learned it. Just done it. Cross-text, right? So this one and this one, there are only two left that are difficult. And the rest, we will just have to rely on practicing and perfecting our skills. And there's not much to it. And yeah, I think the important bit is to practice as much as possible and try to find the reason why you're not doing it right. So next time, if you find an error, don't try to correct it. Try to find the reason that you're making it wrong in the first place. Like on the for the two that are taking on the August SAT, which is 1 week from now, you're going to have to rely on yourself a lot to find out what is your weaknesses and what is your perks. Perks meaning that your pro, and weakness is your con. What is the advantage and disadvantages of yours? And also the rest of you who are taking on the October SAT, you're trying to find which category you're making mistakes at and try to find what is the reason. There are only a handful of reasons, whether or not you are just reading too fast, too quickly, or you're reading too carelessly, or you're purely in a wrong way, or just overthink or overlook, right? Remember, time management is everything. Do not spend too much time on a question because you are going to make it wrong if you overthink. And you also make it wrong if you overlook, which is spending too little time on a question. So try to manage your time as best. For those who are taking on the October, I'm going to suggest you to focus on time management as much as possible. And also for the August test taker, because I've taught that a lot of times already on the supplement lessons and that we usually take. All right, do you guys have any more questions for today's lesson? I find that for such difficult questions like central ideas and structure and purpose, your performance is quite great. And because I don't expect you to do 100% correct, but I would expect you to do it like 50% correct in a very short time. All right. Try to manage your time as much as possible. And yeah, if there's nothing more, that concludes our class. And I'll see you guys again soon. Good luck, and see you guys later. Okay, bye.